Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa McAllister, and you're listening to the Melissa M.A.D.E Show. Now, for decades, I've dedicated myself to helping women break the cycle of dieting, navigate through all the fads, and change their lives through my nutrition coaching. Now, each week, I'm going to talk about everything from deep nutrition, mindset, self-care, the ideal workout routine, tips on how and why to implement intermittent fasting in your life, my favorite recipes that are not only crowd pleasers, but they're actually healthy for you, and so much more. Now, with small and consistent changes, you can defy aging while living a happier, healthier, and more heart-filled life. I'm so excited to show you it's possible with the right strategies that are so simple to adopt. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Melissa M.A.D.E Show. So today I kind of feel silly because I feel like I'm talking about my sponsor. I don't have a sponsor, but I'm going to talk about the M.A.D.E diet today. And so when you see the Melissa M.A.D.E Show, of course it has something to do with the M.A.D.E diet. But you know what? When you look at the words, the M.A.D.E diet, in and of itself, I kind of want to break that down before I get into actually what the M.A.D.E diet is. Let's talk about the word diet. Shall we? Literally speaking, your diet is what you eat in a day. But you know, people have taken the word diet and we've used it in all different kinds of ways. And we've created a ton of diets out there. And I just want you to remember that diets usually are created for good. That whether they're nutritionists, dietitians, doctors, fitness influencers, your neighbor next door, doesn't matter. Everybody who creates a diet does it with really good intention. What happens is we tend to take things to the extreme. You know we do, right? It doesn't matter. So I talked about this on my Instagram a little while ago, that if you hear that vegetables are good, then everybody wants to become vegan. And all you should do is eat vegetables and fruits, right? How about, you finally learned that fats, good healthy fats, are really important in your diet. So what do? We go keto and we eat mostly fat. We find out that meat, good quality meat, is not bad for us, but actually can be beneficial to our health. What do? We become carnivore. So when we think, or when we hear something is good for us, we tend to go, way extreme to one side or the other. And we even have right now, it's very popular to talk about diet culture and how it triggers some people. Some people who may take things to the extreme one way or the other have just decided, and I'm proud of them for deciding for themselves that anything that's labeled diet is something they want to ward off. And I totally get that. Now, when we talk about M.A.D.E, and it's an acronym, M-A-D-E, and let me just tell you, I was the girl, probably you had somebody like me sitting next to you in junior high or high school that had the permanent marker of something written on their hand on test day. That was me. I was acronym queen. If I wanted to remember anything, if I wanted to pass a test, I would make an acronym and I would put it on my hand. So yes, M.A.D.E is an acronym. And it actually started off with me partnering with Beachbody and creating some sort of what we called screen name back then. And I became Melissa M.A.D.E. You want to know why? Because way back in the day, when I used to watch TV, MTV had a show called M.A.D.E. And I don't know if you ever watched that show, if you ever heard of it, but let's say, for instance, the chess player or the band geek, as they would call him, wanted to be the quarterback for the football team. And so people would come in and they would help that person get made. So I was like, I'm going to make a spin off of that. So I created Melissa M.A.D.E. And then that blossomed into what is now Team M.A.D.E. And so I just have a small group of thousands of women, mostly 99.5% women, that, really love health and fitness. And I created Team M.A.D.E. And I made that acronym stand for Making a Difference Every Day. And, that does go into the M.A.D.E diet as well, because I want everybody to wake up and to go, okay, I'm going to make a difference today. Whether you make a difference in your own life, in your family's life, in a friend's life, in a coworker's life, in a stranger's life, you're just going to wake up that day and go, you know what, I'll make a difference today and do something positive. So when it came around to me creating the M.A.D.E diet, if you listened to the podcast before where I talked about the 8-hour abs diet, which was my freemium that Micheline Johnson told me I needed to create, that talked about my love and my 2-decade stint of being an intermittent faster, I really started to dive into intermittent fasting. And it was funny, all of the books, all of the studies and the research that I was running into, there was a parallel. They would talk about how good intermittent fasting is, but then they also talked about how really watching your carbohydrates. And before you turn this off, I want you to understand, I am not someone who's going to tell you shouldn't have carbohydrates. I eat carbohydrates every single day, and plenty of them you will hear. But to be a little bit more conscious of the carbohydrates that you have. If you're intermittent fasting, to also, not be afraid of fat. Fat is good. To be, eating plenty of quality proteins and to have your carbohydrates, but it's not a free-for-all. And unlike what the government told us with that food pyramid, the bottom with all the grains probably isn't the best thing for us. So I was reading and all of that, and I was just really getting intrigued by it. At the time, I was probably, when I created the 8-hour abs diet, more paleo-esque, where I had, just read again that many people have sensitivities or intolerances or even allergies to both wheat and dairy. And so I pulled back on that myself, and what a change for me. And my daughter. My daughter had really bad acne, and we took Terry. Who's Terry? We took dairy out of her diet, and she cleared up so beautifully. And it's just a side effect of having that intolerance of dairy. It's the inflammation in the skin. So I was kind of paleo-esque then, but still, I wouldn't say low fat, although I was very low fat in my 20s and 30s. I was your girl that was eating everything fat free, and but I had gotten less afraid of good healthy fats and was adding it in a little bit better. I wasn't using the margarine anymore. I was going back to real butter, those kind of things. So that's what happened, was me just kind of doing this research and realizing that, wow, there's really good information here about not only not eating right when you wake up to when you go to bed, to just shortening that window a little bit, but also having more of a balance of fat and carbohydrates and proteins, as opposed to getting most of your calories from carbohydrates. So I started studying that, and it became kind of an obsession, to say the least. And M.A.D.E was created. And so what M.A.D.E stands for is moderate protein, adequate fat, decreased carbs, and 8-hour window. So what I would love to do is try to kind of break each one of those down for you, and the science behind it, and why I use that acronym, which worked out perfectly. I could make the acronym M.A.D.E for anything. I mean, you could take me to the middle of the desert and tell me to create an acronym for all the things in the desert, which there's not that many things in there, and I could do it. It's a gift to make acronyms. But let's start with M, which stands for moderate protein. Now, right now, protein is a huge buzz because it's really, really stinking important to our well-being, as it has always been. But it's just taking a huge focus right now, mostly because I think because we tend to, eat a more carbohydrate-rich diet, and it makes our protein just a little bit less. It's very rare for most people who are just trying to eat better and trying to eat healthy, get enough protein in a day. So moderate protein stands for not too much. I mean, you don't want to be, sorry for all my carnivores out there, you don't want to be carnivore. That's just a little bit too much protein in your diet. And you also don't want to be super low because it is so important for the building blocks of our bodies. Now, when it comes to the M.A.D.E diet, I give I do give a big percentage because you guys, every single person is different. And if you find somebody, if you're following that beautiful fitness influencer who has, the physique to die for, and they have, a meal plan, keep in mind that for the most part, probably their job is to look like that. So they eat very, very clean and they work out a lot in the day. I mean, it's their job to do that. And if you are ready to have your job be working out and eating extremely clean, then their diet might work for you. But if you just live, your very healthy, normal life with 3 or 5 children at home and a husband who can't put on a pound if his life depended on it, and you love happy hour and you love going out to eat with friends and stuff, then their diet might not work for you. But with the M.A.D.E diet, we do have a kind of a sliding scale of whether or not you're on the scale and the side of really wanting to build muscle versus you're happy where you're at and you just want to maintain what you have. But if you read all of those health and fitness magazines and you see that they always recommend a gram of protein per pound, I say that you want to weigh, not pound that you weigh right now if you're wanting to lose weight, but the weight that you know is your happy, healthy weight. About 35% of your calories coming from protein will give you about that pound or that gram per pound. So when I say moderate protein, for those of you that are looking to really build muscle, you are going to be right about that 35%. But for those of you who aren't strength training on a regular basis, or maybe you love to run and you want to keep that nice lean physique, you'd be closer to 20%. Now, as I said in my last episode, and you'll probably hear me say this a lot, where you find one study, there's going to be another study that's going to contradict it. And that's just life. And this is where you find your sweet spot and what works for you. So there are plenty of doctors and scientists out there that actually believe that being on the lower scale of protein, being 10, 15, 20% is best for longevity, right? And then you've got people on this side that are telling you that you need plenty of protein because it's really important for the body. It is. So whether you're going to be the person that's around 20% or 35% is going to have to be your decision. And hopefully there's somebody that you can speak to that's educated that can help you make that decision if you are completely lost. Protein is incredibly important. It's something you have to think about. And if you can afford it, get the really good stuff, the grass-fed, the grass-finished, all of that stuff. If you can't though, if conventionally raised meat is the best for you and your family, that's okay. I would rather you eat that than to not get enough protein in your diet. Or you can consider not eating quite as much of that really expensive stuff and getting, and mixing it with some conventional meat as well. My husband and I bought half a cow. I have enough red meat to last me probably the next 5 years. And it was really inexpensive because we did that. I know it's an upfront cost, but in the long run, it is a great time or money saving way and time saving way, to be honest, because I don't have to go grocery shopping, to have a freezer full of really good quality meat to grab when we decide to have red meat, which I know will be a question. How often? I really probably have red meat once or twice a week, and that's about it. And then lots of fish and some pork here and there, and chicken makes its way into my life several times a week as well. But there you go for the M, and moving on to A, which is moderate protein, adequate, I don't even know my own acronym, adequate fat. Oh my goodness, did we do a disservice by scaring people about fat? And now listen to me, there are really, really bad fats out there. And so just like having quality proteins is important, even more important is making sure that the fats that you have are nature made and not necessarily man-made. We and when I say we, I mean like big food tends to grab, of course, the cheaper fats to make food cheaper, because we like to buy cheap food. And So all of these, oils and fats are in these foods that we eat. Even if it's a healthy food, most likely it doesn't have a healthy fat in it. And over time, that's really going to cause, a fatty acid imbalance. So both omega-6 and omega-3 fats are really good for us. We need them both. But the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is all skewed these days because of processed food. Our processed food has a lot of omega-6 in it, and not as much omega-3. Now, you actually do need more omega-6 than you do 3, but it is, I've read as high as, 20 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3, where you really want it to be 3 to 1 or 2 to 1. And that's causing a lot of inflammation in the body. So we have to be very careful where we get our fats. Again, it's a sliding scale. It depends on, where you are in your health and fitness journey. But I always like to start people off at about 50%. And I know that might, make you pull back a little bit and you're like, 50% fat, that's a lot. But I want you to remember, fat has a lot of nutrition in it. I think one of the biggest fears we have about fat is that it's more calorie dense than our friends' carbohydrates and our friends' protein, which instantly make people think, oh my gosh, fat is going to make me fat. And that's just not the case. The nutritional value that's in, let's just say, a piece of salmon, it's a superfood. It is ridiculously good for you. And in fact, the other day I was watching a YouTube video of a gal who was saying to eat whitefish instead of salmon because it has a lower fat content. If you are balancing out your macronutrients, then and you may not need the fat from the salmon because maybe you have healthy fat coming from other areas, totally get it. But if you're looking at food 100% because of its calorie content, we need to take a step back and go back to looking at food for its nutritional value. And then, secondly, maybe look at, how calorie dense or calorie void is it? But the most important thing is how nutrient dense or nutrient void is it? And a lot of the fats that we have naturally occurring around us that we've, kind of warded off as, making us fat or unhealthy for us are incredibly nutrient dense and so important for our well-being. You need good healthy fat to build hormones. How many people that seem to be a little bit off in the hormone department? I can name two hands full of people I know that we need to balance our hormones a little bit. And that's really important. And when you eat that really, really low fat diet, your hormones will sacrifice because of that. So healthy fat is really important. So like I said, we start at 50. And sometimes it'll slide down a little bit less, and sometimes it could even go a little bit higher, depending on your lifestyle. So we talked about protein and about how much you should have on that sliding scale, and then fat, how much you should have on that sliding scale. So what's left? Yeah, carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the last one. And I'm here to tell you, I don't even know the term, but I don't carbo load. I don't have low carb days and high carb, not intentionally. That's where I'm getting at. For the most part, I am very carb conscious, and most of my carbohydrates come from vegetables. And it's funny too, because people who follow me on social media will see my breakfast and they'll see my lunch and dinner. Let's say, for instance, usually my dinner is a portion of protein with a lot of vegetables. I mean, it's trough of vegetables, and I cook it with olive oil or avocado oil or coconut oil. I put some butter on it. It's because I definitely want the fat soluble vitamins in those vegetables to come into my system, and they won't without a good healthy fat present. Meat and vegetables for dinner. My lunch, it varies, but I try to have a salad for lunch every day. Especially if I'm going out, because eating salads at home is a lot of work. But it's wonderful to go to a restaurant and just point at a salad and go, I want that, and then it just appears. It's wonderful. And then breakfast is usually eggs of some sort, 2 eggs. I'll make some spinach in there or have those vegetables as well, and maybe some avocado, and then I have a shake. And so people look at that and they're like, you don't eat carbohydrates. And I'm like, what? Every meal I have carbohydrates, but we have been taught to think that vegetables aren't carbohydrates. I don't know why, but you would be so surprised at how many people are surprised when I tell them, yeah, my vegetables are carbohydrates and I get quite a bit of them. You should see my serving sizes. So keep that in mind. So people can go as low on the carbohydrate scale as they want and then slide it on up as well. Now, I'm not I think I'm pretty active. I mean, some of you, probably 0.1% of you, have taken a group exercise class of mine that I either taught or I was a master trainer and I did a master class. You saw my energy. I don't lack energy. And I give 199% when I work out. I give it my all, full of energy. But I'm not I don't feel like I need to carbo load or I need that rice or I need that bread in order to do that whatsoever. My vegetables 100% give me all the energy that I need. And so if you are, and here comes another huge buzzword, we're talking about protein being a huge word that I'm sure you're hearing right now. And another one is insulin resistant. And insulin resistance is really the start of a lot of autoimmune diseases to come if we don't catch it early. And insulin resistance happens when obviously our body is just creating too much insulin because we have too many, generally speaking, carbohydrates. I'm not going to get on my soapbox because I just don't want you to think that you can lump some carbohydrates together because it just makes them all sound bad and they're not. But when we have too many carbohydrates, our body obviously just keeps pumping out the insulin to keep that sugar out of our bloodstream, which we have to do to stay alive. And so when you have all of that insulin going through, your body just starts to go, I don't hear it, and the cells just don't uptake the glucose because there's no signal for it to do so. And so when we pull back on the carbohydrates, then we tend to allow our body to become more insulin sensitive again, which is really, really important. Intermittent fasting does that as well. So it's a double whammy, which is why, like I talked about in the beginning when I started learning about intermittent fasting and then, being more carb conscious, I was like, oh, I get it. A lot of doctors, a lot of scientists were ahead of the game because now it's just wildly popular and everybody understands this insulin resistance, which, can cause metabolic disorder, which can, start to create prediabetes, and then it can go into full-blown type 2 diabetes, which takes a long time to get there, but you're on your way if you have this insulin resistance. And so we want to catch it as soon as we can. And so by really pulling back on your carbohydrates for a little while to create that sensitivity can allow you to ease them back in as long as you're putting in those healthy carbohydrates back into your diet that you can go as high as you comfortably want to. Now, in the new revised M.A.D.E. diet, I talk about how I almost want to say that the M.A.D.E. diet is the Mediterranean diet and the Paleo diet got together and had a baby. As you know, the Mediterranean diet is, known as the healthiest diet in the world because it's it's where people eat that are in the blue zone that live, well over 100 years. There's red wine, there's lots of healthy fats, there's really good fatty fish in there. And I believe in that. And I also believe in Paleo in the fact that I just want most people to take one at a time, because you never know if you do them together. You never know which one it is, but one at a time to take a break from wheat or gluten and then to take a break from dairy and just see how you feel. You may notice no difference whatsoever and you're one of the lucky people that really do fine with it. Or you might be one of the people that cut it out and they're like, oh, I can't even begin to tell you the thousands of people that have just felt better and have been able to get the weight off by just making one or both of those changes. So it's always worth giving it a try. And because where one study says cool and another study says absolutely not, what matters is what works for you. And you will never truly know what works for you until you actually dive into it and make that commitment to yourself to see how you feel by intermittent fasting, by cutting out, refined and processed carbohydrates, by, limiting or cutting out the dairy or the gluten. You never know. And I just want to really encourage you, if there's anything I can take out of this, is for you to be your own healthy experiment. Don't get obsessed with it. It's just a simple experiment. Because if you right now don't look and feel your best, something's holding you back. And you may not know what it is. And generally speaking, I'm here to tell you from the thousands and thousands of women that I've been able to help that it could be, it could be the amount of food you're eating. That's always needs to come into play. It could be the ratio of macronutrients that you eat. It could be the fact that you have sensitivities to food that you don't even know that you do, right? And then to find that out, it's so wonderful. So here we are talking about decreased carbs, and I have berries. I love berries, have them all the time. They're always in my refrigerator. Blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, love them. Lots and lots of vegetables, including potatoes and like real corn, like the real stuff, real corn on the cob. I love all vegetables. Now, I always do get asked when it comes to, I think it was the plant paradox, where you have some doctors going into, vegetables that aren't healthy for you. I'm never going to go there with you. If it's a vegetable and it's chock full of vitamins and minerals, I want you eating it. Now, for some of you, when you're trying to become insulin sensitive again, you may not want to have potatoes and corn every single day of the week. Eventually you can get there, but allow that, because they do spike your insulin just a little bit more than, say, broccoli does, or asparagus does, or Brussels sprouts. Freaking love my Brussels sprouts. But those are going to spike more. And so if you're really working to keep that insulin low so that you become sensitive again, you might want to not have those as often, or even do without them for a little while until you really just start to feel amazing. And so you want to cut back. But refined and processed carbohydrates are really under the umbrella of things like breads and pastas and rice and stuff like that. I don't have that very often. And again, one study will say one thing, another will say another. But what I have really learned in all of my research over the last many years is that they can really cause what we call dysbiosis, or just gut problems. And it's for sure that gluten causes what they call transient permeability, which means that it does cause holes, or the leaky gut in your stomach. If you're healthy, those holes close up really fast and you're fine. But if you do have a lot of wheat, or you have a lot of that gluten, eventually, the strength of that gut lining starts to wear down and those holes close slower. And then you have the bypassing of what should stay in the stomach getting into the bloodstream, which is going to make you feel very unwell. So again, those things are, never say never. There's going to be a time you're going to go to your friend's house for dinner and they make the most amazing garlic bread on the planet. Have your piece of garlic bread. But I'm here to tell you, and I might be that little angel or devil on your shoulder whispering in your ear, save that kind of stuff for then, not having it every single day, especially when you're just not feeling well, to figure out what it is that's holding you back nutritionally from feeling your best. Have those kind of things. Maybe cheese just doesn't agree with you, or you could be like my daughter and have those, that cystic acne, and you really want to cut out dairy for a while. Do it, and you don't notice a big change, or you're like, I do feel a little bit better without having so much dairy in my life. You're going to have pizza with your kids every once in a while, and that is okay. But not putting dairy into your life with every single meal, putting cheese into your omelet and having cheese on a sandwich, and then dinner putting cheese on your broccoli, might be too much. And to pull that back and just see how you feel. Now, the last thing is E. And E stands for 8-hour window. Now, it was funny, I was listening to a podcast, Dr. Huberman, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, and I found this fascinating because I had never read anything like that. So you might want to take it with a grain of salt, but he seems like a pretty smart man. Was talking about the reason that they kind of coined fasting in an 8-hour window for eating is because back in the day when they used to do these lab tests on intermittent fasting on animals, there was somebody who was only there for 8 hours a day to study these animals and how they were doing during their fed versus fasting. And I was like, that's freaking fascinating. But I have seen many studies that show just eating within that 8-hour window, literally allowing your body maybe 4 hours after you wake up and 4 hours before you go to sleep without eating is tremendous for the body. You got to listen to my other podcast to go deeper into 8-hour eating window, 16-hour fasting, to understand the benefits of the growth hormone in the morning, and also the better quality sleep and the repairing of everything, the mind, the muscles, the body, by not going to bed with food in your stomach. Life transforming right there. Now, my mom might listen to this. And if you guys have been following me for any length of time, my stepdad, who I absolutely adore, had kind of surprise quintuple bypass surgery not too long ago. And the one bit of advice, the one thing, he's also very diabetic and he loves his sweets. And he used to have a big bowl of ice cream before he'd go to bed every single night. And Mom, he better not be. But if there was just one thing that I could plead to help his health, was for him not to eat for a couple hours before he went to bed, for so many reasons. It was good for the diabetes. It was good for his quality of sleep so that his body could repair. It just went through this major surgery, and he needs to rest and let his body go through the processes of the cell renewal and the brain repair and the muscle repair to keep him healthy, because he needs to stay around for a very, very long time. And so with you as well, with the M.A.D.E diet and having a good amount of quality protein, not being afraid of those fats and having adequate fat in your diet, decreasing the carbs. And when I say decrease the carbs, I'm saying decrease from the standard American diet. Some people call that a diet. And I'm here to tell you, I guarantee what we ate was more the M.A.D.E diet. We just keep increasing our carbohydrate intake because big food keeps making these very inexpensive, delicious carbohydrates that we want to eat. And so our calories and I was going to say nutrition. Most of the time, there's not a lot of nutrition in that stuff. Our calories are coming from these nutrient void carbohydrates instead of nutrient dense proteins and nutrient dense fats and nutrient dense carbohydrates. And so we need to cut out all those yucky carbohydrates to allow for more quality carbs, quality proteins, and quality fats. And then eating not from sunup to sundown, or from the minute you wake up until the minute you go to sleep. It's that simple. And I was talking to my daughter, who's in school to be a nutritionist, and we were talking about how people will come to you. They'll come to you with migraines, or they'll come to you with SIBO, or they'll come to you with PCOS or Hashimoto's or dysbiosis, bad gut or bloating or constipation. And it's always, what can I do to make that better? I wish I had a really quick fix for you that didn't take what I'm about to tell you. But here's what it is. You ready? Boy, you got to hydrate. You've got to drink plenty of fluid. So right now, I have tea. I mean, it doesn't always have to be water. It could be sparkling water. It could be, some organic, single origin Costa Rican coffee in the morning. It could be tea. It could be lots of other things that aren't, don't have crap in them. But lots and lots of water. Stay hydrated. Your sleep is ridiculously important. Get those 7 to 9 hours. I will do a podcast on sleep all in and of itself because it is so stinking important. The fact that you do get enough protein in your diet, that you're not afraid of fat so that your fatty acid is balanced and you're able to, every single cell in your body has a lining of fat around it. Imagine being on such a low-fat diet or eating the wrong types of fat. So say, for instance, Melissa, getting off on a tangent again, the seed oils, those yucky oils that we have, those kind of oils make the membrane around the cells really rigid and hard, where the healthy fats that you get from butter, that you get from olive oil, the membrane around those cells, the fat makes that membrane really malleable, and it allows things to come in and out, which is just one of the millions of reasons why you got to be really careful with your fat. You also want to just be carb conscious. Now, I used to say, and it still says in my book, low carb, but that tends to make people think that it is a fad diet. And it's not. It's really just going back to the way that we used to eat real wholesome carbohydrates and a lot less of the refined and processed carbohydrates. And then not eating first thing in the morning. There's no need to. And then going to bed on a full stomach as well. If you do those things that I just listed, and I also want you to either learn to take stress out of your life, or if it's stress that you're out of control, say for instance, you are driving in traffic to and from work every day, and you just can't find a route where you're not dealing with 5 o'clock traffic. Lord help you. Think about this. Are you listening to maybe heavy metal on the way home and you've got rage? Or you listen to a beautiful podcast that talks about, living stress-free, or you listen to, say for instance, Christian music that just puts you in a better state of mind. If you can't change the stress, okay, I want you to find a way to cope with it better. Okay, have your children talk into your phone and make you little voice notes that you can listen to when you start to feel stress well up in your body, and listen to your baby's voices tell you how much they love you. Can you imagine what a change that would be? So anyway, always looking over at my recording, seeing that I talked way longer than I wanted to, but that's just kind of an introduction to the M.A.D.E diet. The book is available at themadediet.com. I also have the M.A.D.E course, which goes more into depth when I talk to you about the healthy fats and the unhealthy fats and the healthy proteins and healthy carbohydrates. The book and the course really go deep into that. Not only that, but even your cookware. I mean, I went deep. Like, what's good to cook in and what's bad to cook in. If you really just want to be, on the top of your game on your health journey and living just a really healthy lifestyle, I got you. But until next time, thank you so much for joining in. I appreciate you being here so much. And I hope you learned something a little bit more about the M.A.D.E diet. And I would love to hear if you've been on the M.A.D.E diet for a while and how it has affected you. You guys have a tremendous and happy, healthy day. Wow, we've reached the end. But before I leave you, I'd love to hear from you. After all, it's not every day that someone reaches out and asks for your opinion. And to me, your opinion does matter. So please share this episode with anyone that you think needs to hear this message. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. My name is Melissa McAllister. And until next time, thank you for being your own health advocate.